Everybody, welcome to this technology issue of Staffing Monthly. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have the CEO of Avionte here with me today to talk about what is essentially the most critical piece of technology that a staffing agency can have. And I want to welcome someone that's been in and around the technology industry and the HCM industry and finance and has a pretty dynamic background overall that actually took over the helm of Avionte nearly 2 years ago. And Rishabh, I welcome you to Staffing Monthly, and I am grateful for you to just share your wisdom and knowledge with our audience today. So thank you for being here. And just if you could share anything that you feel the audience needs to know about you and really what your current involvement in staffing is, I'd like to just start there.
Firstly, thank you, Dan, for your kind words and for having me today. And really excited to be able to have this conversation around the technology and in staffing. My role as CEO of Avionte is really to lead the transformation that we're seeing in the industry. Ultimately, as a technology firm, what I look at is where is the market, and we see a great shift happening from a employer-centric model to a talent-centric model. And I think the dynamics that have happened through the pandemic that had actually started before, with the demand for labor exceeding the supply for labor, means that this whole model for staffing, and therefore the model for technology of staffing, needs to evolve and change. And I'm really happy to be sort of at the center of that universe, if you may, and to help our clients, help talent, help the industry as we move forward towards this new talent-centric model. So that's broadly what my role is.
So I think that's fascinating. I think that you said something in there that I want to come back to in a second about how you've noticed that the market has truly shifted to be talent-centric, and you're leading that change. But before I jump into that, you've got an amazing background. Like, it looks like you've had a successful track record in some key industries, from a lot involved with the technology space, but involved with benefits management and with HCMs and even in finance and advisory for other software-centric companies. Like, what is it that drew you to Avionte specifically? Like, you could have done anything. Like, what drew you to this opportunity that said, hey, this is where I'm gonna make my mark?
It's a great question. The short answer of it is, I think this is where the action is in terms of staffing and the transformation of an industry. So throughout my career, I've been involved in transforming businesses. You'd mentioned on the benefits administration side, on payroll, been able to do this, across, geographic regions, as well as be involved in a number of, companies impacting healthcare and other people-centric sort of industries. And having spent a lot of time on the employer side of employment, if you may, really realizing that the staffing companies are becoming much more strategic. No longer is staffing kind of the last person hired and the first person fired. It's actually a strategic piece that all employers now need to deploy, whether you're in light industrial, you're in healthcare. Staffing forms a pretty cornerstone of your employment strategy. Furthermore, I think people are making choices to take temp staffing. And so when I looked at the industry, we actually have an opportunity to enable people to build full-time careers out of their part-time jobs. And we have an ability to put people to work. And frankly, the level of innovation that's required, the level of partnership that's required to make that happen, just makes it just a very exciting, place to be. And then Avionte is, as a market leader, having, 1,000 clients and, millions of people that we serve with ATS and payroll. I think it just was the right platform to go execute on that vision. And so, really grateful to be in this spot as well.
I think it's amazing. And just looking at your track record, I'm excited about what you'll do and how you'll help Avionte evolve and really encapsulate that talent-centric market. And you really hit it on the head with how people are going to be able to take that part-time job and put stuff together to create a full-time gig. I literally earlier today, I was actually addressing a room full of HR professionals, and we talked about exactly that, about how literally, 2/3 of the entire gig economy are making it a full-time go, working, 31 to 50 hours a week. And they've essentially left traditional employment And that looks like a lot of different things. And I think traditional employers are going to have to think differently about the future of work, which I think bodes very well for the staffing industry. That can help if there's a software that they can bring into their clients and help them reimagine, traditional work and inject some concepts of the gig economy and actually access a wider talent pool that might help support that. I think that would be a good mix. And it sounds like you see it the same way and you're bringing the software piece of that, right?
Right. Absolutely. I kind of look at staffing's been around for a long time. And, if you were a staffing company that started 50 years ago, your technology was a filing cabinet, a phone, and a Rolodex, right? That doesn't work today. It moved from there to saying, hey, I need a system of record that I can use to go, recruit people, pay people. And now it's going one step further. It's basically saying that just as employers have had a way to deal with their talent, where you've got, a mobile app where an employee and, as a full-time employee, you go through a talent journey, so too in staffing. And so you want to be able to have one place where you can go apply for a job, you can get interviewed, you can get, your job, you can get onboarded, you can, go from that to get on a shift, register your time and get paid, and then find your next job right at the same place. It just makes a lot of sense to do that. So where we see the staffing platform going is really a means to an end. We need to enable those interactions in the most seamless way as possible between, the talent and recruiter. And that's what employers are going to be looking for in the future, is who can make this, a frictionless interaction as we go forward, and who can bring talent that I need, as fast as I need them, make sure they show up. And then, if I like them, have them keep coming back.
I swear you were in the room when I just had this talk earlier today, because that was exactly what I was talking about to these HR professionals that are struggling with recruitment. And I'm like, go through your own application process. Like, start at the top, try to find your own jobs, try to find them on your website, find them on job boards, and go through the entire process. And then think about, would you want to do this for the job that you're offering? Because that's the experience that you have. And then when you're doing that, think about how people can literally pull out their mobile phone, buy just about anything with the click of a button on Amazon, and have it delivered to their front porch within 4 to 24 hours. And that's what you're up against. You're not necessarily, when it comes to the job, you might be competing against somebody else, but when it comes to the process, because there's a lot of opportunity out there, people will take the path of least resistance. And if it's easy to go to work with you, they'll go to work with you. And if it's hard, they won't. They will go to work with someone else. And they were like, you could just see the light bulbs going off in the room. So I think it's smart that you're taking that approach.
I completely agree with that. If you look at what's happening in staffing is the consumerization in staffing. Every other industry that's gone through consumerization starts with the consumer, at the center of it. If you think about, an Uber, would an Uber be the same without actually having an app for both the drivers and, for the customer, which is us? And if you think about Amazon, as you mentioned, Amazon, if they were trying to basically say, hey, I'm going to take Best Buy and, Bed Bath and Beyond and put them onto a site, would it be Amazon? They have to create a single user experience in order to make that happen. And staffing is no different. So we have to lead with talent. We have to lead with mobile. We have to lead with the way that we create that, single experience that then links into the system of record, that then creates that interaction and that workflow between recruiter and talent. And as a result of that, it actually is going to make the recruiter a lot more efficient and allow them to be focusing on the relationship with the employers and thinking about what kind of talent they want, as opposed to doing some more of the mundane tasks. Back when we had prior Amazon, you got on the phone and you ordered your sweater. You don't need to do that anymore, right? You don't need someone on the other end taking an order. You just do it on your phone. So the recruiter's job is going to change in a very positive way. And the companies that embrace that will thrive and grow. And I think those that won't are just going to get left behind. And that's the pivotal point we are in this industry.
I couldn't agree more. I see it the same way. The last issue of Staffing Monthly, all the leaders of the industry that I talked to, that was the overarching theme of the digital transformation. Is agencies need to find a very nimble sufficient software that can let them automate the tedious tasks and then literally focus on the relationship points every part of the process. And I'd even laid out you draw a line and you look for all of your touch points with people. Don't automate that, lean into that, because those are the agencies that will win. And if it's not a direct connection between you and a candidate or you and a client, look for software to automate that piece of it and maximize the time that your people can give doing what software can't, and that's quality relationships. So we are eye to eye on that one. That's huge. So there is one question I want to ask, because you made this point about how, the software or the ATS has evolved again. And I feel like, from my perspective in the industry, I feel like the applicant tracking system was that one system that was a little bit better than the filing cabinet. And it was just a database, a searchable database, and it pretty much lived on a server or on computers as hard software. And I feel like the next iteration was going to the cloud. And I think a lot of applicant tracking systems have gone there. And I think most agencies, that's what they think is the latest evolution, is just moving that database to the cloud and maybe giving it a facelift. But I don't see it that way. I think staffing software isn't really an ATS per se anymore. I think it's evolved into something else. And I think there's another evolution going on. And I think you see it differently too. So what is your thought on that? Like, where do you see staffing software as it relates to how agencies typically think about an ATS?
I think you make a couple of great points. For me, the cloud and the migration to the cloud is sort of baseline now. And we are on the cloud. You need to be on the cloud because that allows you to have redundancy. It allows you to have security. It allows you to have, we, for example, are on AWS and we have immutable vault storage, which means we, can protect against ransomware, things like that. You need scale of going to a cloud. That to me is kind of the foundation of the house. Now it's no longer sort of the differentiated feature, even though many software companies are struggling to get on the cloud because it's not trivial, but they are struggling to get there. For us, it goes beyond that. It's really about thinking about how do we improve this interaction and sit in the middle between an employer, a staffing company, and talent, and improve that in a frictionless way. And so I think the ATS still is the sort of core of that, but the ecosystem needs to evolve. And so the way I sort of think about it is, if you think about Apple and you've got a computer, an iPhone, and iWatch, well, they all need to work together in an ecosystem to help deliver ultimately, for you as a consumer. We think about it in the same way. You need a mobile platform for talent, a place where talent can go and be able to do their different steps along the talent journey. But that has to work seamlessly with the ATS system. That has to work seamlessly, with the back office so that you can get people paid. And that also needs to, in many ways, as you think about your business intelligence platform, you want the data that can then get, exposed and provided to the employer side of things. And so to me, it's evolving from purely a system of record to then being an ecosystem that's enabling this transaction or this interface, this platform between employer, employee, and the staffing company.
So it's almost evolving from a system of record to a system of action or a system of engagement to enrich the process.
Right. Yeah, it's no longer enough to be the automated, filing cabinet. It's really about how we creating these interactions. How do we measure engagement? How do we measure, the time it takes for you to fill a job, the redeployment rate? That's what it's moving towards. It's less about pure back office efficiency. It's that you have to do that, but it's more about how do I drive, growth and profitability. And that's really what is very exciting for us as a company is we want to see our clients grow. We want to see them grow profitably, and we want them to be able to do that by delivering efficiency, but also being able to deliver, candidates and talent on time faster than anyone else.
I love that. I swear I'm famous for saying, with no money, there's no mission. You have to be profitable. And sometimes it's got a negative stigma when you're in the human industry, but again, the more money that you can make as a company, the more investments you can make into growth and taking care of your people and giving them tools to make their lives easier at work. So You hit on something that I think is fascinating to me. There's a piece of data, I can't remember the survey. I don't know if it was Staffing Hub's benchmark report or something that SIA or ASA put out, but I saw a piece of data that I thought was fascinating that said that 80% was 80% plus of staffing agencies, their placements come from, I should say, staffing agencies' placements, 80% of them come from job boards, new applications to job boards, than out of their own database. And I found that alarming. And when I dug into that a little bit and talked to some of the, agency owners and managers, and a lot of it's because that's the path of least resistance. It's actually a lot easier just to post a job on Indeed and get fresh people saying, yeah, I'm interested in that job, even if those fresh people already live in your database, than it is to kind of go and farm your own database. So I see that as an area where I think people, might be misusing or not fully benefiting from, an applicant tracking system or a software. What do you see? Or do you recognize ways or observe ways where agencies might be misusing a software or maybe not fully getting the full benefit out of an ATS or a software?
I completely agree with you. We look at the redeployment rates. So we one of our clients did a study when they used our mobile platform. The redeployment rates went up, 3x. That's significant. Wow. So when you think about going and, the way my analogy is, do you want to go out and fish in the open sea, or do you want to fish in a barrel? And if you go out to open sea, it's exciting. You're putting on these ads, you're getting the people, but it's a lot expensive. A lot more expensive. If you can build a relationship and mine, that relationship with the candidates that you already have, that just makes complete sense to do it. And so as we've geared our mobile platform towards engaging, that talent, you still have to go out and get new talent, but if you can redeploy them, when you look at the average redeployment of 13%, that means 87 people that you have went out. Now you're recruiting them again. If you can move it up to 40, 45, 50% with our platform, suddenly you're shifting your dollars towards building better engagement with talent and things of that nature, and you can fill a job a lot faster as well.
Those are my two takeaways out of that. One, why pay for the same candidate twice? If you already paid to get them in your database once, why do it again? And two, if you just think about how long it takes to onboard a candidate to get them ready to deploy, like that's time that you wouldn't have to spend if you could just redeploy someone out of your own database. So that inherently is going to be quicker, which is going to give you a competitive advantage. And when I saw that number north of 80%, I was like, there's a lot of agencies that could make some very simple changes with the tools or whatever software they already have and probably gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace. So I think it's a big one. Especially when you think about the biggest challenge facing staffing today is filling orders. I mean, to see that your case study have had a 3x redeployment rate improvement in the face of everybody's fill percentages have gone down, so that's pretty big. I want to stay in that vein for a second. From where you sit, you have a unique perspective, being the CEO of a market leading software to the industry. What do you see as some of the bigger challenges that our industry is facing today?
I think one, you hit the nail on the head with regards to finding talent. Right now, we can all say there's sort of a war for talent, more jobs open than people, and even as economic situations may change, you're going to have pockets in industries where that's going to remain the case for the next decade. And so, in order to be successful as a staffing company, both be able to fill the jobs as well as to be profitable, the question is, how do you go and find that talent in a more efficient way? And so the way we think about it is, redeployment is one piece, but ultimately, what are the interactions that you can take that are done by the recruiter today that could move over to talent? Just as we talked about with an Amazon or an Uber, what is it that a talent could be doing to drive that efficiency? And then what can you be doing from a data standpoint to figure out where you're winning and where you're not winning, right? So for example, you're going to win on redeployments. And if you take a mobile applicant approach, you might be able to have a faster way to fill, or even a higher fill rate is what we're finding. But furthermore, where are you seeing, pockets of success with recruiters, with regions, with clients? And, what are you looking at in terms of your gross profit? Like that's a huge measure for us, is growth and profitability for our clients, and how are they going to achieve that using various different tactics.
I love that. I love, and I am a data guy, and I know we were chatting briefly about the big launch of the BI and reporting, business intelligence and reporting, that Avionte is rolling out. And I saw the sneak peek of it through the press release and what you put out, and I'm eager to dig into it. But let's talk a little bit more about that. What are ways? We always talk about fill percentage, and that's kind of the outdated metric. And we talk about, redeployment rates, which is a really big one, and retention rates and conversion rates. But you obviously put a lot of thought and a lot of investment to put together what is looking like the slickest reporting dashboard that you can get. Why did you do it? Like, what data do you see that staffing agencies should be looking at? And then from there, what are the insights that you think they should be able to glean from it?
So we're very excited about having recently launched the new business intelligence and reporting platform, and we truly think that is where the industry needs to move towards. Because we have both front office and back office data, we were able to take those and create, a platform for basically being able to take that data, create the linkages between your front office, so around sales data, and with your back office, which is your pay data. And when you start combining those together, and then you start looking at it from a recruiter standpoint, we can provide gross margin. That to me is, the gold standard that we need to strive towards as an industry. Is if you can start seeing what's my gross margin, and then start making decisions based on it. What's my gross margin per customer? What's my gross margin per recruiter? Is one region better than others? Why is it falling behind it? And then drill down from that. I think the actionability of that data goes up immensely, because otherwise you're just swimming in data and not being able to do anything with it. We actually now have gross margin data. When the next version, we're going to be adding talent data. So now the interaction of what talent is doing, what your recruiters are doing, and then how does that lead for you to drive gross margin and some of the other operating metrics that we have as well. So we're pretty excited about this new platform and what it can do for our clients.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, how you're marrying those two metrics together, because really it's ultimately going to give you a glimpse of the capital efficiency, if you will, or the individual ROI of the talent that you're placing out, which I got to believe probably comes from your experience in finance. Is when you're doing financial analysis, the most high performing companies are intimately aware of their ROI at a macro level or micro level. So I love that piece of it. And one thing I have to share with you that I'm excited, and I'm hoping that it does this at some iteration, but one of the techniques that I work with staffing executives on is a simple business Foursquare, where we plot all of the clients based on a couple axes, but it essentially will tell you who are your VIP clients, your quadrant one, which are typically your higher margin, high utilization, your gold standard. And then it's okay, well, who's lower margin but high utilization? So maybe you're making it up in volume, which is a strategy. Or who's high margin but low volume, and maybe you're just a boutique shop, but you just make an amazing margins and do less work for it, which is also a viable strategy. But then you have that dreaded fourth quadrant that has the low margin, low utilization, but oftentimes ends up being the highest resource consumption. And when I take people through this exercise and we plot it all out, before you do the big reveal, you ask them, say, hey, give me 2 or 3 companies that you think are going to be in each quadrant. And it has never failed me. There is always one that is in quadrant 4 that they will swear to you is going to be a quadrant 1 client. And they don't realize how resource inefficient the client actually is. And when they start realizing it, they start focusing on clients and orders that are closest to the dollar, and they also start working with those clients that are less efficient to raise rates or increase utilization or pull some of the other levers to make it a more resource balanced engagement. So I love what you're doing. I'm a data geek, and I'm gonna just tear into it when I see it.
I think you will really like what we build, because that's exactly the ahas that are going to be there. Is like, wait a second, I thought this was going to be my most profitable, fastest growing client, and now you look at it and they're, I like that whole 2x2 matrix that you talked about. The other piece you mentioned, the finance side. I've been involved in the private equity side of things, and a lot of our clients, they're multi-generational companies, or even some of them are now backed by private equity. Everyone of our clients wants to think about how do they build their legacy, how do they increase value of their business, and it really comes down to growth and gross margin. I mean, that's really your two biggest levers of value creation. Regardless of if you're multi-generational or backed by a finance company, it's the same thing. And so how can you get there without actually having the instrumentation to fly the plane? And that's, I think one thing we're pretty excited about is bringing this to our clients, where they can start making some of those choices. And then they start thinking about, wait a second, is that top of the funnel dollar that I'm spending to, get a job every single time, is that valuable? What's my total cost of, doing business? What's my real ROI as I think about different parts from, finding someone to placing them, across one client and many clients. So that's, I think, the opportunity that, this data analytics and business intelligence platform presents. And then with folks like yourself that would look at it, I'm sure there's going to be so many things we haven't even thought about, but the underlying platform is robust with the data and with the ability to morph that data that I think we can keep making good progress on it.
I love it. And I'm not sure if it's going to tie into the finance side of the business. I know it'll have payroll data and margin data, but one of the concepts that I often teach on is a dynamic finance model. So you can actually look at how you're splitting your gross margin up, because obviously those dollars are what you have to run the company. So there's a percentage of it that has to go to the front of the house for sales, marketing, recruiting, all that stuff. There's a percentage that has to go to the back office payroll team, the corporate infrastructure. And then there's the portion that goes to, the bottom line. And if you operate within a healthy financial model, then you're going to run an organization that can grow and continue to reinvest. Is there anything on the roadmap that might bring that sort of finance intelligence into it, so people can look at it and say, hey, I know I might be making, $10 an hour gross margin or $7 an hour gross margin, but really I'm only getting, $3 or $5 or whatever for my budget. So they can actually tie the budgets and forecasts that managers should be doing out of their software. Is there anything like that that's coming down the pipeline?
I think there's enough sort of data that's out there that would point, the companies to do that, because there are certain things that don't run through this, as you talk about their SG&A and where they're spending some of those dollars. The ability to link in the data from external sources is absolutely available from a technology standpoint, where our next step is really integrating in the talent data, so we know how that interaction is going, and you can start sort of seeing a number of other metrics that relate to talent. What are they being engaged in the most? How many people have gone and placed themselves online, and et cetera, et cetera. Onboarding, how fast was your onboarding? How many people fell through when you did onboarding? And so taking that talent-centric data will also point towards some of the things you're mentioning to say, for example, with our mobile 24/7 app, you can customize it. So you can actually use that as your own marketing tool. And the minute somebody clicks on it, you can get, the app, and now you can apply for a job there all the way through. So you can start doing comparisons of saying, how effective was that for my marketing, and how much, do I need to go to another job board when I can be accomplishing things here? So I think it's going to give you enough, pointers for your broader P&L. But our focus is on, providing our clients with talent data and also their gross margin data.
And obviously those are the core metrics to the agency that they should be looking at. That's when I look at some of the softwares out there that sort of estimate gross margin and, some of the payroll data that comes into it, and which means your pay and your burden and your billing might be a little bit off. And I don't want to be negative about the staffing industry, but comparative to a lot of other industries out there, it is a leaner margin industry, so you have to be as precise as possible to make good decisions. And that's I guess the big takeaway for me that I like about how you're marrying two true data points together, so you can actually make, better decisions with better data. So I applaud that. And I'm grateful that you're bringing that to the market.
Thanks for that. And as we look at the interaction between the recruiter and talent, And the impact, even as we're seeing on the gross margins, we are seeing instances where, it is a lower gross margin business, and we've seen it go up from 16, 17% to, 24, 25%, which is pretty substantial in this industry. And that's really if you didn't have the tools, you couldn't really, look at changing, that kind of a profile from a gross margin standpoint.
That's true. Even if you're estimating and you're 20 cents an hour off, like with the amount of billable hours that a typical agency has across the year, that can be a significant chunk that you end up subsidizing out of the bottom line, and that'll sting come end of year financials. So I like it. So switching away from finance and business intelligence and getting into the actual functionality of the ATS, or the software, it's a term I'm going to have to kind of evolve in my own vernacular, but when you envision a staffing agency and you think about equipping them with technology, if you could put yourself in the shoes, if you could kind of put a CEO hat on for a mid-market staffing agency, how would you envision the technology stack? Like, what would that ecosystem look like from your standpoint?
I think the first word is ecosystem. You are creating an ecosystem that is enabling you to deliver your business. And so it shouldn't be a bunch of components. It needs to be an ecosystem working together in concert. Usability matters, and really thinking about how are you creating that interaction between a recruiter and talent in the most efficient way so that you can serve your clients. And so we see at the core of it an ATS, which is your system of record. You should be able to do everything from recruiting all the way through to payroll on that, and that's going to be really core. No matter which industry you're in, you're going to need that. I think the second most important component from our standpoint is mobile, because if you have talent out there, every other industry that's gone through consumerization has mobile. Everyone has an app. Facebook has an app. Uber has an app. LinkedIn has an app. We need to have an app. And so you have to have an app that is yours, that allows you to create this talent journey and improve that interaction. Because if your talent is coming back to look at their pay, if your talent is coming back to get on a shift or getting messages all in the same place, they're much more likely to be in your ecosystem versus someone else. And oh, by the way, it's going to make your recruiter more efficient because they're not receiving calls to say, where's my pay? Or you need to show up for a shift. It's all happening through your system. I think the third component of this, as we've talked about, is the business intelligence and reporting. You need instrumentations to fly the plane, and that needs to be part of that ecosystem. And then the last is a lot of our clients will have custom processes, will have internal systems, external systems, and partners that they want. And so you need an API platform and a set of integrations that again link in seamlessly to enable that user interaction. And so an API platform that enables you to do that. That's what we see as sort of part of this ecosystem in order to deliver what's required in the market today.
So I think that's a great overview of it. If I may, just something I see as a shift in the marketplace is I would say it's a newer technology for the staffing industry that I think is probably, I don't know, it'd be opportune for a staffing software to integrate it in some way, whether it being as an API partner or maybe even building it as a native, feature set. But that's the programmatic job ad management. It's one thing to be able to connect your job board sites that you might have, subscriptions or licenses to your ATS and publish directly out. But if you could have, now that you're so hyper focused on data analytics, if you could actually bring in that type of programmatic job ad management and make it user friendly right in the ATS, so they can distribute to a larger network, and then also set the rules for each job within the ATS and track that data to optimize it, I think there'd be a massive advantage, because that's really where I see agencies going. That's the next tool of recruiting that I see getting adoption.
I agree with you completely. In fact, as we look at the API platform, for us, it's Avionte Plus. There's a set of partnerships that we are driving. So, for example, background checks and tax credits that needs to just be embedded in there to drive compliance and things like that. The programmatic job ads and job distribution, that's one that we are also integrating in. So I completely agree with you. It needs to be part of that ecosystem. The next layer of it is saying, hey, in addition to the ones that we think will hit the 80-20 in terms of the integrations we'll do, including, the one you mentioned, there's going to be, some that will be unique to you as a staffing company that you want to bring in. We'll provide you with the APIs to do it. And that's really on the margin, the ones you want to bring in, but you'll have a very easy way to, to do that. So that's sort of how we think about it, is that the 20 that are the most frequently used, like tax credits and background checks and, programmatic job ads, those need to be core to the ATS. There's no point having a marketplace for those when you need to use them every single time. Let's make the best user experience so you don't have to go to 5 different systems and it just becomes part of your ecosystem. So tight integrations with those is critical in our mind to create that user experience and that efficiency.
So that makes a ton of sense. And I don't want to oversimplify it with a terrible analogy, but I mean, it's sort of like the Wheel of Fortune approach. After a while, they just started giving you the standard letters at the end because they knew everyone was picking them and you kind of needed those ones. So it said, hey, you get these letters, so pick some new ones. So that makes sense that you're taking that same approach. You're just going to give people natively what they need. And then if there's something customized that's unique to their business, you'll open it up for them, which I think it's a smart way to balance that.
I love that analogy, and I'm probably going to use it because that's exactly right. You don't need to go provide, we're not NASDAQ, right, or marketplace. You need to provide an integrated user experience. And why do it every time when you can do it once in a much better integrated way so that the recruiter does not have to leave their app to be able to do this? It needs to be embedded in there. And usability matters. In any consumer industry, usability matters. Why is Amazon so good? They have good usability. Why is Apple so good? They have good usability. That's the same thing we need to do, and it doesn't come by sending you to 5 different platforms to do one single task.
And going back to that Amazon example, I feel like we've used them a lot for this, but if you think about it from the consumer standpoint, when I go on and I buy something, I don't necessarily care which warehouse it's coming from. I don't even care which seller it's coming from. I just want the product because I need it for something or I want it for something. And Amazon knows that. They know that I don't really care. So they're the ones that figured out all behind the scenes and they made it native to me. So when I buy something, I'm buying it from Amazon, but they might go source it from thousands of different sellers on Amazon. But to me, it doesn't matter. It's all one seamless experience. And it sounds to me like that's what you're doing. You've got these great resources that are there, but you've packaged them together seamlessly. So the user or the recruiter in this case doesn't really have to be frustrated trying to coordinate logistics of multiple suppliers.
Exactly. And we are giving the flexibility that, hey, if you wanted to add another supplier, or if suppliers wanted to, come into your ecosystem, that's going to be, 5% of the time, 10% of the time. The rest of the time, we're going to provide this to you.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then, so switching to sort of the back of the house, we talked about a wish list item of mine for the front house. I'm glad it's on the roadmap, or at least the radar. What about the pay side? Some of the big advancements we've seen in recruitment go to, pay cards and how quickly you can pay people. And are you doing anything different there than the very standard, just kind of weekly direct deposit that's been in our industry forever? Like, what does the payment side piece look like as a benefit to the employee?
That's a great point to bring up. We actually have created our own payments platform called the Change platform. And the reason we did it is exactly what you're talking about. It's the last mile from a consumer standpoint, from consumer being talent. They need to know their pay. And so recently we launched our 24/7 pay app. So now if you're an employee on your mobile app, you can see your pay. We also have our own pay card that you're going to be able to see, what do you have on your card. We can do daily pay, and it's really making sure that this entire experience is curated in one place. So your pay with your pay card, your daily pay, all is just different frequencies of pay at the end of the day that we're able to provide. That early wage access, that's going to be the next one that's coming, and it's all going to be available where you can see it right here on your mobile app, right? That's going to be critical for us. So we have our own platform that we built and our own user experience that fits into mobile. So I'm very excited about it, and I think financial well-being of the people we serve is critical. And by being able to give them the answers on their fingertips and flexibility for when they get paid, it's something that they're not calling the staffing agency for, but even more important, they're actually getting flexibility. They might take a job because you're, offering it to them in many cases.
It's true. It is so true. And I come from the sales and business development and strategy camp. So I live in the world where you're always thinking about your unique value proposition to get a client to use you as an agency. And we've got bullet points upon bullet points that you can share and all of that. Yet on the recruiting side and in HR in general, that's generally overlooked. You don't think about what are all the kind of intangible or indirect reasons that someone might want to choose you. And there's a lot of staffing agencies in the market, and some of those staffing agencies serve the same exact client. So you have to differentiate yourself in some way. And on-demand pay or daily pay or early wage access, that's the next frontier of it, and that's already starting to become mainstream with some of the on-demand pay apps out there. So it's amazing that you have that within your system, because that's going to, users of Avionte in this case, if that's their software of choice, that's going to help give them a competitive advantage in the talent marketplace, which is going to give them a stronger inventory to go and sell to the client, which is going to make it a whole lot easier for the sales team. So that's a big piece that ties it together. I like
now
it.
our two other points I'd make. One, just in terms of, there was a study done about a year or so ago that 54% of people, their biggest concern is their financial well-being, in some of these jobs. We address that. I think the second is that behavioral change. So our next evolution of this is being able to, just as Uber can have, differentiated sort of pay, we can create incentives as the next layer on top to say you show up for a shift, or you've done 10 shifts in a row, or certain score ratings that you can provide incentives, which will be the next generation of this. So the reason we did it is we want to control that last mile of payments with the employee, and that gives you additional benefits in the future. So later this year, next year, you'll be hearing more about that.
So smart, so smart. I am thinking about case studies where that is huge. That is so manually time consuming. Like, everyone tries to come up with some sort of incentive program to reward tenure or retention or sign-on bonuses, all that kind of stuff. And it's just a nightmare to track that sort of stuff. And then you do your best effort, and then something slips through the cracks, and then someone that truly earned it doesn't get paid it on time. And, no good deed goes unpunished sort of thing. And it's just, so the fact that that's on your roadmap is huge, because again, that's going to help an agency win the war for talent and differentiate themselves. Say, hey, if you're going to use an agency and you want to use us to be part of this growing gig economy, like, this is why you should choose us. That's another huge piece. Oh, I love that. I didn't even think that was on anybody's roadmap, but that's smart. So let me ask this. We're getting to the end, and I don't want to consume too much of your time, but Avionte has a big user conference coming up here in a couple of weeks in Minneapolis. You want to just give me a shout out and tell me, like, what is it about? Are you, why do you put this on? How do you get all these speakers to come in? Like, kind of just explain to the viewers of what you do for your users, and probably even maybe potential customers that can come out and check this out and participate.
Yeah, thanks for asking for that. So in a couple of weeks, first week of August, we've got our Connect conference, which is one of the largest conferences in the industry. We host a number of our clients across many different industry. We host, potential clients as well. And then we have an incredible, set of partners and speakers that come in, really industry leaders coming together to talk about, everything from the future of staffing all the way down to looking at each one of our different products and where the roadmap is going, as well as getting feedback from, the clients from their standpoint, where we should be going and what things should we be doing next. So it's a huge conference. We have, hundreds of, clients and users that attend. We would love to have, clients, prospects, join. And it's really about the future of staffing and how we're going to execute on it. So I'm very excited about being part of this conference and leading some of the effort towards it as well.
I am too. I saw the lineup, and I'm going to include a link for anyone that wants to check it out or register right here on the page. But it's a strong lineup. I looked at it and I was like, there's going to be some tough choices of which track you go in. And so, out of curiosity, are you recording every session? And is, like, if you if I want to go to one, but I don't want to miss the other, is there a chance to go back and see a recording of another session later, or is this you got to be there to experience it?
I believe for some of our attendees, we should be able to do that, although we'll have to ask my team which ones we're recording. But this one is back in person, which I think just in itself is going to have a tremendous amount of energy. The last couple have been, online because of COVID, but we're really excited to see people and just spend some time. And that's where the idea generation is going to happen. And we learn, a lot. As much as we'll share, we're really excited to learn from our clients in the industry.
I love it. Well, I'm looking forward to being there, and hopefully you and I can meet face to face in person. That would be an honor of mine. Rishabh, I'm grateful for your time today and your insight. I think the conversation had a lot of nuggets that I took out of it, and hopefully our viewers feel the same way. Is there any parting word that you want to share with our viewers, or maybe let them know how to connect with somebody at Avionte to learn more about it, that you'd like to share before we part ways?
Yeah, thank you. The two ways I would just say, one is info@avionte.com, so avionte.com, or on our website, you can click on demo and just schedule a demo, and one of our folks will get with you right away. So info@avionte.com, or through our website, just Google Avionte demo, and you should be able to get to our demo, and we'd be happy to share what we're working on.
That's great. And I'll get those links right on here so they can just click right on the page and take them right there. So I would encourage anybody, I've got a number of friends that utilize Avionte and they're very pleased with it. From what I've seen sort of start to evolve and change over the last, 12 months, and some of the roadmap that I've gotten some sneak peeks on, I would encourage anybody to take a look at it. I think how the pandemic has changed the industry and some of the maybe turbulent times ahead, I think having a nimble technology partner at the center of your ecosystem is going to be prudent, and it's worth looking into. So, Rishabh, thank you for being with me today. I look forward to meeting you in a couple of weeks at Connect, and I'm grateful to be in your network now.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, take care now.
Take care.